One of our big cases involved a very gifted sports figure, a very talented basketball player who probably, in his time in high school, was the best player in the country. Not probably, certainly was the best player in the country. And because of a scandal that was going on in New York at that time, in which he was not involved, but in which he knew all the players, because these were the players from the New York area, and he was from Brooklyn, he was barred by the NBA, the National Basketball Association, from being drafted into any of the professional teams. And he was so gifted, it was a crime that he was kept out of playing those great years. And we came to know him because Daddy's brothers and Dad were involved in a basketball team here. And we came to know Connie Hawkins. And in the course of knowing him and over various things that happened, Daddy came home one day and he said, I don't think he ever did it. We all assumed that he was involved in the basketball scandal and had done something. We didn't know what. We didn't talk about it, but we just assumed that was the case. It turned out that was not the case, that he was an 18-year-old illiterate, basically, when he graduated from high school, having never played any kind of varsity ball, and that it was assumed that he was involved in the scandals, and he was barred from the league. They denied it. They said it was coincidental that nobody ever called this guy to meet with him, this guy who was the best basketball player in the country. It just was coincidence. We brought an antitrust case against the National Basketball Association, and everybody said, you can't do that. Baseball was exempt, but there was no case on basketball. And we said, well, maybe you can't, but we're going to do it anyway. And so we did. And eventually, that case went on about 5 or 6 years, and 4 years. And eventually, we got him into the NBA with a $1 million contract. We went around the country deposing every general manager of every basketball team. I learned a lot of basketball that year. I hadn't done it before. And I got to go to, there's a tournament that goes on every year in New York City, in Harlem, called the Rutgers Tournament. And it's where the great basketball players all gather and they play. It's not organized. Nobody gets paid, but it's the great basketball players. And when I was working on Connie's case, he took me to that. And there I was in a sea of fans, mostly young black kids, but also older people who really loved basketball, and that was just a joy. Learning that, and learning a lot when we handled Connie's case. We got to spend time with him, and he invited us to his parties. He used to have parties when the other team came into town, and getting exposed to and having some interaction with that black culture was really fun. It was enlightening and enriching, and it taught me things that I had never known. So that was fun. And of course, after we got Connie into the league and had a big party. It was a successful party. Somebody said the next day the police came only 3 times.
And that was an amazing thrill for me growing up. I'll tell you a quick story, which I haven't told you, that I just was reminded of recently. I was, when I was working on the Rodney King case in the Los Angeles office, a friend of mine introduced me to someone who was a supervisor in the office, and this had become obviously a big part of my childhood, and there was a book written about this case called Foul, and my friend said, this, Harry Littman, etc. Oh, and his parents worked on the Connie Hawkins case, and the guy, without missing a beat, he had never said, your parents are Roz and Dave? He had read the book Foul, and as for many kids of that generation, it was one of the greatest sports books and one of the greatest sports stories ever. And I know you still get, well, Connie Hawkins became for me, revered but also loved member of the family, and you still hear about from people all the time who want to adapt that material to make a movie of it, etc.
Just recently, I had a long interview with someone who does filmmaking, who is doing a film on basketball, and has a very large segment of it devoted to Connie Hawkins, and came and talked with me and looked at. We have a scrapbook, not your usual scrapbook. Connie Hawkins was 6'9". The scrapbook was commensurately larger than other scrapbooks. Standing on the floor, it would be about this high. It's probably around here somewhere, but it was a wonderful case, and it was really a case where the good guys won. We had the white hats from the beginning, but they didn't know.
Now everyone does. I actually, speaking of scrapbook, I remember Dad used to keep, or you used to keep a scrapbook for all the cases in which
Dad kept one for my cases.
For your cases, any idea where that?
No.
It got pretty fat.
Yeah, it's around somewhere, but I learned about it one day when he was doing it. I had no idea, but he used to do clippings. Of course, it was a lot easier to get columns written about you in the Braddock Free Press than it was in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
There were plenty in the Post-Gazette,
There
as
was
I
some
remember.
in the Post-Gazette as well.